Tonight on CFTK-TV, the Casian Hospital has now officially opened in Terrace. The Canada Post strike reaches day 11, and scurvy cases have emerged in remote communities.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. The BC Coroner Service has confirmed with CFTK-TV that they are investigating the crash that took 2 lives on Highway 37 earlier this month. The RCMP said that they received a report of a single vehicle rollover on November 6th at approximately 10:30 p.m. One witness reported seeing the vehicle hydroplane and go off the road before landing upside down, submerged in the water. The RCMP said that 2 occupants of the vehicle did not survive the collision. And the Coroner's Service says that because both are open investigations, no more details are being released at this time. Now, after the official announcement in 2019, construction 2 years later, a monumental moment in Northwest history is now official. Now, it has been a long time coming for people in the Northwest and Northern Health and their staff here, with the Casian Hospital now opening today here on Monday, November 25th. And on a tour with the hospital on Friday, hundreds of workers were ready to make the official transition right down the street from the Mills Memorial Hospital. While quieter now, this building is expected to hold a big portion of Terrace's population, and those in the facility were not recorded to protect their privacy for the time being. All patients were officially moved over the weekend and over 4 levels. Northern Health looks to focus on trauma services, orthopedic surgeries, pathology, radiology, and pharmacy services, and it will also look to train medical students training here in the Northwest. And walking around, there's over 80 units with electronic access for workers, private bathrooms for a portion of the rooms, and of course, the stunning views that we have here in the Northwest. Northern Health said they were adamant on having larger windows for more sunlight for patients that may be having some of their toughest days of their lives. Now, the original plan for this hospital was pitched over 10 years ago, and construction officially started back in June of 2021. Northern Health will now shift their focus on how the parking situation will play out, with many cars forced to park outside of the hospital. 173 spots are now available, and the plan is to have 313 available in the near future. And while there is still work to be done, this remains a significant location not only for Terrace, but the entire Northwest. Now, after addressing long-term concerns over services and accessibility, the Casian Hospital is hoping to be the primary care center here in the Northwest region in British Columbia. From CFTK-TV, I'm Damian Smith. And a memorial walk will be held in Terrace tomorrow to remember a youth taken too soon from the community. Sebastian Moore was a student at Caledonia Senior Secondary at the time of his tragic passing, and family and friends and anyone who wishes to join in support are invited to a memorial march to commemorate the anniversary of his death. The group will be walking from the St. Matthew's Church on Lake Cowles Avenue at 3 p.m. on November 26th. And the march will end at the band shelter at George Little Park. Any inquiries can be directed to the Moore family. And Northern Health has directed the City of Prince Rupert to issue a boil water notice as a result of equipment failure. Crews are said to be on site working on this issue, and the city will notify the community as soon as the notice is lifted. For now, though, citizens are urged to boil water for at least 1 minute for cooking, drinking, making ice, and brushing teeth. A sudden pattern of scurvy has emerged in northern Saskatchewan in the more remote areas, and a big cause of the emergence has been a lack of nutritional and financially affordable foods. Here's Allison Bamford of CTV.
A disease often linked to 18th century sailors re-emerging in this day and age.
Vitamin C comes from lots of different food sources, but if you don't get those food sources, the body can't do what it needs to do.
Scurvy, caused by prolonged and severe vitamin C deficiency, can lead to fatigue, joint pain, changes to your hair, and loss of teeth. Doctors confirmed 27 cases in northern Saskatchewan over the last year. Patients ranging from 20 to 80 years old, 79% are Indigenous.
We have reason to believe that the scope of the problem might be larger than we think at this point.
Food insecurity and high food prices likely to blame. Photos taken in one northern Saskatchewan store this week show $11 for raspberries and grapes pushing $20.
We have bigger issues. It's about health equity, it's about food insecurity, it's about equitable distribution of resources.
Food insecurity in Canada increased to nearly 23% in 2023, up from 18.4% the year before. Nova Scotia, PEI, and Saskatchewan seeing the highest rates. In Toronto, doctors linked the issue to a recent scurvy case there. A 65-year-old woman suffering from bleeding gums, bruising, poor mobility, and weakness. Her diet consisted of non-perishables and processed foods.
If they're lacking nutrients of vitamin C, they're bound to be lacking other nutrients as well.
Doctors say scurvy is a diagnosis that shouldn't be overlooked. In the case of LaRange, all 27 patients were treated with vitamin C supplements, and now health officials are using education as a form of prevention. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Coming up next, with Black Friday this week, small businesses continue to adjust to the Canada Post strike. Welcome back. Well, a BC Supreme Court judge has awarded almost $800,000 in damages to a man who was injured by a defective bear deterrent device. Court documents say the man was hurt while working in a remote area in northern BC back in 2019 and tried to use the bear banger to scare off a black bear that he encountered. Instead, the explosive device malfunctioned and went off, leaving the man with permanent hearing loss as well as shrapnel lodged in his leg. A ruling from Justice Sandra Wilkinson said that the company distributing the device knew as early as 2017 that the devices were defective and could potentially detonate. Now, the Canada Post strike now hits day 11, and many small businesses are preparing for the worst with Black Friday this week. And so far, limited progress has been made between both parties. Kamal Karamali from CTV has more.
It's action-packed at this Toronto hobby shop, filling out orders and banking on big bucks for Black Friday. The only thing at a near standstill,
this was the sole order that we actually are shipping out,
are the deliveries. What used to be 30 packages sent out each day, now down to 1.
This is Friday, this is Saturday, and this is devastating.
The Canada Post strike means businesses are now resorting to private couriers like FedEx or UPS to get packages delivered, and that comes with extra costs.
Where we would pay $20 to $23 to ship something, that now it could be $40, $50, $60.
Something customers might not be willing to pay.
The impact to us is our volumes have dropped over 75%.
This sock retailer willing to absorb the additional delivery costs for Black Friday, hoping customers will warm up to them in time for Christmas.
What we're trying to do is just eat a lot of that cost and accept that we're just going to make less money this year.
On day 10 of the Canada Post strike, both sides don't appear to be any closer to reaching a deal.
While we're at the table bargaining, Canada Post has been laying off our workers. Over 150 workers were laid off last week.
With the 10 days of the strike, we've already lost 8 million parcels that have gone to the competition.
For many, it's not just a game with their livelihood on the line.
Many make their season in this week. And if they miss out on that opportunity, many of them are just not going to make it.
The bigger concern will be in about 2 weeks from now. Businesses are usually given a cut-off date on when deliveries need to be in to make it to customers in time for Christmas. If Canada Post is still on strike, there's a good chance thousands of people won't get their gifts this year.
And turning to tonight's weather, the Prince Rupert area should have a few clouds with winds coming from the northeast at 20 kilometers per hour and up to 48 points. There should be a low of -2 with a wind chill of -8. The Terrace and Kitimat region should also have partially cloudy conditions with winds from the north at 20 kilometers per hour up to 48 times as well. But those winds should die down around midnight. -8 will be the temperature at night with a wind chill of -14. The Bulkley Valley and Lakes District will have its coldest temperature for a little bit at -22 tonight with partially cloudy conditions. And now onto your weekly weather forecast. After a colder week here in the northwest, it should get a little warmer, including Prince Rupert, who should have their rain return for the week at steady temperatures with a high of 7 on Thursday and a low of 1 degree on Thursday night. There could be some flurries tomorrow though, however. The Terrace and Kitimat region should expect snow for the rest of the week except tomorrow, which will also have the low of -8 with sunny conditions, and the high will be -2 on Thursday. And finally, the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District sees the true winter weather come in, with flurries and snow going back and forth throughout the week except tomorrow. And the low will be tonight, other than tonight, will be -17 tomorrow night, and the high will be -4 on Saturday. And now into your Northwest Roadside Report, and for more updates, make sure to check out drivebc.ca. On Highway 16, there is utility work in Haida Gwaii, compact snow between Telkwa and Broman Lake, utility work in Vanderhoof. On Highway 37, there is roadside brushing between Miziadin Junction and Cranberry Junction, utility work between Bell 1 Bridge and Deltaic Crescent Bridge, and tree pruning between Bell 1 Bridge and Deltaic Crescent Bridge. On Highway 118, there are slippery sections, as well as the Nishka Highway and Telegraph Creek Road. And these were what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, the Canadian dollar has reached its lowest amount in quite some time. Hello again. Well, updates are coming in from Judy Trin of CTV News about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, including Canada's spending amount up until 2030, and Donald Trump, who will be taking U.S. head office this upcoming January.
Anti-NATO protests had no impact on the federal government's goal of spending 2% of its GDP on the military by 2032.
We are on a clear path to reach 2% in the coming years.
But it's not fast enough for business leaders, with Donald Trump coming into office in less than 2 months and threatening to impose tariffs. There's concerns delays will impact future trade negotiations.
There are serious implications if all signals from the United States and others is you got to shape up or we will ship you out.
The Business Council of Canada says the defense sector should be transformed into the country's economic backbone. It calls on the government to hit the NATO target by spending $75 billion annually by 2030. Defense officials have only budgeted $58 billion, a gap of more than $17 billion in that same time frame.
Everything we can do to accelerate those timelines, everything we can do to deliver faster actually saves Canadian taxpayer dollars too, because the longer things take, the more expensive they tend to get.
The Council's plan also calls for a review of all federal priorities to find money to shift to defense, a move that could result in job losses in other departments.
Governments are elected to make difficult choices. Governments have chosen to really burst the size of our public service, disproportionate to the levels of hires that have been having in the private sector.
And since 2019, the asylum seekers count has doubled, and this has left a number of Canadians protesting the numbers, but also site selection as well. Colton Prale from CTV reports.
For weeks, this Ottawa Sports Centre has been home to protests over plans to build temporary housing for asylum seekers. The site is one of two that will house sprung structures, temporary, customizable tent-like buildings where hundreds of newcomers can stay for up to 3 months. Some already exist in Toronto with another planned in Peel Region.
So we're really concerned about, number one, the structure, but after that, the site selection itself. Where do people need to be? Somewhere where they can better integrate into a larger community.
Shelters across the country are overwhelmed. At one point, asylum claimants made up nearly 70% of those staying at the Ottawa Mission.
We had 45 to 50 people per night sleeping in our lobby waiting area in plastic chairs or curled up on the floor because we had no beds, no mats. We were already at overcapacity. This has gone on for over a year.
Asylum claims have more than doubled since 2019, and 2024 is projected to surpass last year's record high. This week, new parliamentary budget estimates show the climbing cost of housing asylum claimants. In the past 7 years, the federal government has spent nearly $960 million on its interim housing assistance program. Over the next 3 years, it's budgeting an additional $1.1 billion.
On the whole, what we're seeing in both the immigration and refugee system is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of frustration.
In a statement, the immigration minister's office says it's focused on moving to sustainable temporary housing for asylum seekers.
BC Hydro said in a recent statement that it has managed to almost restore power for all of its customers after the bomb cyclone weather system battered the province during the previous week. And the electric utility next said that crews have been working around the clock to bring the power back to every customer affected by the outages, which reached more than 300,000 properties last week. Efforts have been hampered by another storm that came a bit after the initial bomb cyclone, which happened to bring wind gusts of over 100 kilometers an hour and managed to delay some ferry sailings back on Friday. Now, compared to our neighbors down south, the Canadian dollar is the lowest it has been in years. Here's Colton Prell of CTV News once again, who has more on how businesses are reacting to this story.
The cost of doing business is getting more expensive. At this European grocery store, the holiday season means marzipan, herring, and chocolates. But importing them is getting costly as the Canadian dollar continues to slide.
My local customers, they suffer because I have to pay more and I have to increase some of the prices for the product.
Last Friday, the loonie dropped to its lowest point since March 2020. And its 3-year tumble risks falling below 70 cents on the dollar, something that's only happened 3 times in the last decade.
It's a blow, perhaps, to the morale of Canadians and the strength of our dollar, but I don't think that's necessarily a game changer.
It means higher costs for commodities like gas and imported foods, and less spending money for Canadian tourists crossing the border. Economists warn the slump could last for months, with the U.S. interest rate expected to stay at least a point higher than Canada's.
I don't want to even think about the January and February, how to manage all the rent, prices increase, and all the stuff what's going around now.
But it isn't all bad. Export and tourism industries could see a boost to their bottom lines as foreign spenders look to capitalize.
Our resort is seeing bookings at 40% higher than it was this time last year, and that's only going to grow with new nonstop flights.
And now we take a look at the stock market. The Canadian dollar has barely changed. The price of gold is down $93.70. Oil is down $2.30. Natural gas is up 16 cents. Aluminum is down $3. In Toronto, the TSX is down about 34 points. The Venture Index is down 3.24. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 440 and NASDAQ is up 51. Still ahead, why some are demanding for an increased focus on mental health services in Canadian healthcare. And welcome to our last segment. And some are advocating for more long-term treatment in the mental health department and want the Canadian government to increase their resources going forward. Garrett Berry from CTV will have the rest.
Every Monday, Christy Allen and a group of like-minded protesters take a simple message to the Confederation Building in St. John's. Long-term mental health care needs to be more accessible.
We need so much more than talking. We need treatment. And I know that sometimes that's really complex. And the government only seems to have it figured out for simple, those short-term sessions.
For 207 weeks now, rain or shine, even on dreary November days.
All the stories I have heard from other people, it becomes personal because they share those with you, and then you take that to heart.
A new report by the Canadian Mental Health Association is adding fuel to her cause. It highlights what it calls grim realities in mental health care. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, harmful use of alcohol and drugs has risen, and patients can't get the care they need.
We know that cost is a barrier.
which is part of the reason why we're arguing for better funding for mental health and to make it part of the universal system of care.
There are slight variations across the country, but on average, Canada puts around 6% of its healthcare spending into mental health initiatives. The Canadian Mental Health Association says that should be doubled, closer to the 15% that France spends or the 11% that Germany spends.
If governments are not paying, then households are. And since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, with inflation, higher food costs, and rising rent, the Canadian Mental Health Association says that has been getting harder.
The group is proposing new laws to guarantee funding for mental health initiatives and a new attack on poverty to lift thousands across the country. Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
And the BC Premier's office released a statement saying that there won't be a sitting of the BC legislature towards the end of 2024. The office further elaborated in the brief statement that Raj Chauhan has been confirmed to be once again serving as the Speaker of the legislature, so there is no need to hold a sitting within the last month and a half or so of the year. And the legislature will instead return in February and start off with a speech from the throne. Now, for our last story of the day, it's about a stash of letters written back in the 1940s that was discovered in behind a wall in a residence out east. Here's Alexander Hollick from CTV in Winnipeg.
Well, I didn't know I had an uncle. There was an Uncle Robert. That must be where my name came from, eh?
It's a discovery decades in the making. One that wouldn't have been possible without these letters, written to a soldier during the Second World War.
I'm Bob Buechler, and I'm the son of John Buechler.
I'm Kim, John's daughter.
John Buechler served in the Royal Canadian Navy in the 1940s.
There's a picture of him on the boat.
On the U-boat.
Stationed at HMCS Cornwallis in Nova Scotia, his family would often write to him from Winnipeg.
So good night, Johnny. Oh, okay.
But what they didn't know was that Buechler kept the letters hidden in the walls of his childhood home.
I had no idea that they even existed.
No. I said, come on, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious.
The 80-year-old envelopes were found last summer by current homeowner George Arcioni while renovating his kitchen. It prompted his daughter Joelle to piece the past together with the present. She reached out to CTV News in hopes of finding Buechler's family.
One lady in particular named Allison, who is a genealogy enthusiast. So she actually did a lot of digging into the family and found some names for me. So then I was able to look up the names and I was able to contact Bob.
It just brought back so many memories.
Buechler married and had 3 children. He died from a heart attack when he was 40 years old.
He was a loving father. I mean, there's pictures of him with all of the kids at some point or another.
Yeah. When it comes to why the letters were left in the walls,
I'm sure he just probably forgot. I'm sure he wouldn't have left them.
Now that they've been found, the family plans to give them a new home.
I mean, they're begging to be preserved if they're lasted this long.
History captured in calligraphy on display for decades to come. Alexandra Hollick, CTV News, Winnipeg.
That will be all for tonight's cast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.